What the audience will see today is what's called cognitive dissonance. The reason John has this is due to his Trump derangement syndrome. John doesn't care about the Bible or Christianity. He cares about the progressive left winning elections and carrying out talking points against Christians. It's about power, and John doesn't want you to have any. What's objectively hilarious here is that this debate isn't even about the Bible at all, or even John's failed epistemology and Christology. This debate is about Christian nationalism being better for society than the progressive status quo. To contrast this, the Christ Nationalist Society is a proposition which states that Christian ethics should remain the dominant force in the United States. The emphasis here should be on a strong central family unit based around a man and a woman, and all propaganda should be moved to the state promotion of that family unit. It proposes abortions be outlawed with some small caveats for the mother's life being placed in immediate danger of pregnancy. It proposes that mass migration be stopped and replaced with manageable immigration policies for the purpose of managed integration without putting the cultural burden on an already burdened domestic population. It proposes that Christians in governing positions are generally better than non-Christians and have every right to govern using Christian ethics as their guide and always have. It proposes the elimination of gay marriage, trans ideology, pornography, sex work, and an educational revamp to stop the glorification of such activities in public school systems. It proposes the potential elimination of no-fault divorce or a cooling period before marriage is allowed, and further that marriage itself is the domain of the religious and not secularists or the state. It proposes that children belong to parents and not the state. It proposes that Marxism is a threat to humanity due to its secular militant ideology and needs to be removed from the national discourse. There are many things which Christian nationalism as a worldview proposes as political changes to keep Christian ethics as its front-end worldview. It proposes an end to feminism to be replaced by strong patriarchal systems, for instance. John's worldview, on the other hand, is more of the same. Mass migration, pro-choice, and particularly he believes the Bible's pro-choice against the fundamental teachings of the church fathers before Rome supposedly corrupted it in 380, and I have all their quotes. Gay marriage and the celebration of homosexuality as an identity, part of the status quo of John. The promotion of trans ideology, part of the status quo of John. The promotion of feminism and female clergy, status quo John. The promotion of sexual liberation, status quo John. And essentially all other progressive views. He's a status quo progressive, nothing more. John basically wants to use the Bible to promote progressive values, but in order to do this, he has to take out the pesky parts, which he doesn't like, which is why he sees Paul as a corrupter. Hilariously enough, he admitted to me he thinks Jesus is God, which, if true, means that Jesus nuked Sodom and Gomorrah, flooded the earth, endorsed slavery, and all of the other great sins in his book that he attributes to God. Yet another contradiction, considering he says Jesus was, quote, a groovy dude. John is a progressive operative, and though perhaps no longer paid by any DNC group, but he is an ideological operative nonetheless. It's also ironic. John says he's tired of people trying to pervert his parents' religion when his parents' religion didn't hold that Paul was the conservative PR manager in a failed Christ messaging contest. Now, I have given the parallels between the ideologies and the advocations. Note here, this isn't about a debate of the Bible itself. This is a debate about the effects of having a Christian nationalist society as opposed to having a progressive society, which John wants. As we go through the effects of both of these societies, just note the effects of mine. Practicing Christians are less likely to divorce, report greater happiness levels. In fact, the more rigorous they are, the happier they are. Virgins, for instance, report, especially Christian ones, the most long-lasting term of marriage satisfaction rates and the highest happiness levels compared to the rest of the population, putting a lie to sexual liberation. Children in married homes with a mother and a father have the best long-term outcomes in their lives, and if they're practicing religious rigorism, have even more success in life and are less likely to be prone to drug abuse and criminality. Religious individuals, 24% less likely to be involved in criminal activities. Religious participation is associated with 20% reduction in recidivism, even among offenders. Higher religion correlates with lower attempts at violent crime with a decline 15% or more. Religious teens, 30% less likely to engage in delinquent behaviors. These are just some of the benefits of my worldview being pushed on society. But I can give you the stats for all of them, everything I just listed. Note, no data is perfect, and these stats may vary a bit poll to poll, depending on the study. But what isn't questioned to any significant degree is if religion itself and the Christian religion operates as a deterrent to criminality and makes for a better society, because the answer is most certainly yes, it does. I can justify each of these proposals I made during the both Christian ethics, and I can use secular data talking points to prove both sides of it, and I'm happy to do so. John, on the other hand, can't, and the reason why is simple. The society he proposes, which is secular in nature, has no foundation for ethics at all. None. Zero. It's totally arbitrary, and that's what will be exposed here today in this debate.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for all your lovely comments. So I was invited here to talk about Christian nationalism. I hope it's okay that I didn't prepare any insults or slights or taunts at Andrew. I wish Andrew nothing but love and good health and a wonderful life and joy. And so I hope it's okay that I didn't prepare any middle fingers for you. Thanks for having me. I just go by the Bible and the words we have. That's the Bible we have. And so I base what we have based on what we have there. Jesus treated women as equals. He was not misogynist like Paul. Homophobia is the opposite of the Sermon on the Mount, and it is not possible to follow the teachings and the Beatitudes and the sermon and think you're better than gay people. Now, Christian nationalism doesn't work. It could work as a society. I'm not here to say it doesn't. I just say it doesn't work with our Constitution or with the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's not compatible. You can't do it. The movement is about power. And across history, we've seen every time Christianity tries to fuse itself with nationalism, it always betrays Christ. It always self-destructs, and it's always about one group of people who think God likes them better and they are elevated above everyone else. So I go by Jesus, who fulfilled the old covenant and brought the new one, right? His message is love, not fear. Jesus brings a new covenant, and that is why Gentiles get to have bacon. That is why you don't have to keep kosher. That is why you can drop the homophobia. And it's why nobody actually follows the book of Leviticus unless they're trying to weaponize a Bible chapter they themselves don't believe in or follow to hurt a gay minority that Christ commands us to love. Jesus was a peaceful, radical, nonviolent revolutionary. He spent his time in the poor communities around lepers, hookers, and crooks. He wasn't English. He never spoke American. He wasn't American and never spoke English. He was anti-wealth quite thoroughly, anti-public prayer, Matthew 6:5, very anti-prayer, told us not to trust the folks who pray in public to be seen, never anti-gay, never mentioned abortion, which is never specifically prohibited anywhere in the Bible. In fact, the Bible never at any point says to punish poor women with greater poverty, never says men can force women to be pregnant against their will, that governments of men have the right to force teenage girls to be pregnant by a rapist against her will. Quite the opposite. The Bible does not have any prohibitions for terminating a pregnancy. That is because the religion of Judaism does not ban abortion. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now. Jesus was against the death penalty, never mentioned abortion, just like God and Moses and Paul and all the prophets. Judaism doesn't ban it. So he was never anti-gay, never anti-abortion. And he never said torture's okay sometimes. He never said you're better than anybody else because you believe in me. He never fought for tax cuts for the wealthiest Nazarenes. He never asked a leper for a copay. And he was a long-haired, brown-skinned, that's in Revelation, homeless, open borders, Middle Eastern, Palestinian, unarmed, anti-slut-shaming Jew. But that's only if you believe what is actually in the Bible. And again, he fulfilled the old covenant. So Jesus brings a new covenant. He reduces the 10 commandments to 2. He challenged or overturned many Old Testament rules, including the death penalty, which Jesus overturns in Sermon on the Mount with turn the other cheek, and ends the concept of retributive justice and says now the focus is on love, because Christ is about transformation, not domination, going beyond what your religion teaches to a deeper kind of love, not some passive permissive state, not just mere affection, a real action verb love, with all of the discipline and challenges and healing that can come with that. And again, every time Christianity fuses itself with empire, it leads to the opposite of Christ's commandments, because Christian nationalism is not a form of Christianity. It's a political ideology that uses Christian language to sanctify power And it generally contradicts Jesus's teachings at every major point. Jesus lifted the lowly and prioritized the least of us. Matthew 6:5, my friends. Matthew 6:5, he gives his marching orders for individuals and nations. Judgment of nations. Are we okay on time?
No, I just wanted, you were cutting out for a second.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So that's where Jesus says he will, at the end of time, judge individuals and nations, gather them all and judge them on certain criteria. You all know his criteria. It's Jesus's most famous speech. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. Jesus's 4 criteria for what will get individuals or nations into heaven or hell are: you care for the poor, you care for the sick, you welcome the stranger, you're kind to people in prison. Nothing about how much you hate gay people, how cruel you are to trans people, how much you persecute the Christian refugees at our border that we've been brainwashed to call illegals because we need to have a dehumanizing slur, because if we see them as human and our fellow Christians, these inhumane policies would trouble our consciences. So again, Christian nationalism protects the powerful. It's about control. And Jesus was all about humility, modeling servant leadership. The last shall be first. Satan offers Jesus all that he can see, offers him all the world, all the power. Jesus, time and again, refuses the power. That's not his movement. It's about love and service. And again, Jesus is offered, he's offered multiple times to be a king, and he withdraws into the wilderness. He's not about power. He welcomes the stranger. God of the Old Testament commands the Israelites to welcome the stranger and treat the alien as one of our own. Jesus says individuals and nations will be judged by how we welcome the stranger. It's like his instruction to the Heritage Foundation. And Jesus says the ones that are going to hell are the individuals and nations who talk a good game about following him, but don't care for the poor, don't care for the sick, don't welcome the stranger, don't care for those in prison. So he preached love. He opposed domination. Christian nationalism excludes outsiders. It preaches fear. And I also don't accept that the current status quo is liberal. Republicans control all branches of government. Labor unions, once the backbone of liberal democracy, which built the middle class, are broken. Our healthcare system is abominable. It's an insult to Christ. Americans deserve the same access to healthcare as all of our capitalist allies overseas, but our healthcare system is a death sentence for poor people. Civil liberties that are being curtailed in the name of freedom. I mean, there's a myth of a liberal establishment because it serves power. And I get that. Try to find someone who's anti-death penalty who'll be elected president. Again, Christ was everything that is derided as woke. And he commands us to pick up a cross and follow him. It's not about being on top, and it's not about you winning all the time. Jesus's ministry is not about what you get. It's about what you do and what you give and how much deeper you love than you thought you could love before. Faith to Christ has nothing to do with being nice to trans people, supporting gender. I don't care. It's got nothing in violation of the teachings of Christ. He's very specific about how we should treat the least of us, and cruelty is not a Christian value. Thank you so much.
Yeah, John, let's talk a little bit about Paul, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And the logical epistemic pincer here. Are you saying that Paul was wrong, and that the apostles were mistaken?
Wrong about what?
With Paul, they were wrong about the teachings of Jesus Christ.
In what way?
When he was laying them down as the foundation for the church in Acts.
I think in some areas he wasn't Christ-like. Christ treated women as equals. He's the greatest feminist in the Bible. Christ broke the laws.
Paul can't be trusted.
Christ broke the laws of his own faith to teach women and allow them to touch him. Paul's misogyny is at odds with Jesus's equality.
So
but
can Paul be trusted?
Well, we don't know, because in many cases,
we don't know.
Look, you see that Paul says that women must be in submission and must not speak in church. But a few chapters later, he talks about Phoebe, who's ordained as a deacon. So which one is it? Was Paul writing different ideologies to different church communities?
Well,
or have many people rewritten his letters over the years?
All I want to do here is just establish if your epistemology is sound. If it's the
I'm
case
saying
that we have,
if
it's the case, if it's the case that we have apostles who are working with Paul, which they are, okay, you do agree that at least they had contact with Jesus, right?
I'm saying Paul doesn't supersede Jesus, my friend.
I'm not saying you did. I'm just asking you the basic epistemology here. If these guys were wrong
For
about their
Paul,
teaching, hang on. Let me ask the question. If these guys were wrong about their teachings about Jesus Christ and laying down the foundations for his church, they got him wrong. Why should we trust their words about Christ at all? Why should we trust anybody's words
well,
about
again,
Christ at all? Why?
well, we're going by the book we've got. Okay. Now, Paul, again, in some letters, he's saying that women must be submissive, never have authority over a man, must be silent in church. And then he's ordaining women as deacons. So which one is it? There are inconsistencies within Paul as well. But the thing is, Paul's movement caught on because the actual apostles were all being murdered by Paul's old buddies back home. So that's one of the main reasons. The other reason is Paul's movement caught on because Paul, unlike the apostles, was a Roman citizen and a Pharisee, so he could travel through the empire and preach his gospel. And once Paul was converted, his experience was, look, it's like Judaism, but no circumcision and have all the bacon you want. And he led to the church having this incredible rate of conversion.
Sure,
Because
I'm not even disputing.
The apostles were all murdered.
But
So-
I feel like you're not really answering my question. Peter and James worked with Paul. Do you agree that that's true?
Yes, that's
okay. Were Peter and James mistaken about the teachings of Jesus Christ when they were working with Paul, or wouldn't they have corrected Paul?
James is the brother of Christ. What have I said that you specifically dispute?
So then the question here is, if James and Peter are both confirming what Paul's laying down in Acts, why shouldn't we trust what Paul's laying down? Why?
Because Paul's a man and he's not Jesus or God. What have I said that you specifically dispute?
Why wouldn't his apostles correct him?
About what? What
For instance, telling women to be silent in church, like you see in Timothy? That was an example that you gave. Why didn't they correct him when it came to laying down in Acts that about homosexuality and his marriage clauses, for instance? Why didn't they correct any of that?
Because they were dead, my friend. They got stoned and martyred, and Paul went on to set up the church.
Help me out here.
Paul's version stuck.
Help me out here. Should we trust that Peter and James, who worked with Paul, right, that they would have corrected Paul, if Paul was incorrect?
You haven't told me what I've said that you specifically dispute.
In whatever you think, you say that Paul corrupted in your book. Paul corrupted the Bible, right?
I think that's a word you chose, but I will say that Paul had a lot of hang-ups that Jesus didn't have.
Shall we use your words?
The homophobia is antithetical to Jesus's message, and Paul's misogyny is the opposite of Jesus. I think Paul's great. There's a lot we can learn from him, but the whole point of my book is Paul is not Jesus and he's not God. And 300 years after he died, the Council of Nicaea decided his letters about Scripture are now Scripture, and that's led to 2,000 years of people using Paul talking about God to say that Paul is speaking for God.
So Paul, hang on, quote, Paul is Jesus's conservative PR guy. Paul is, quote, his PR guy who corrupted the Bible, quote. You, sir, you said he corrupted it. What do you mean? Who said that? You said that. What are you talking about? Then why'd you just say you didn't say that?
I asked you if I used the word corrupted. If I did,
yes, you used it. Page 51. Page 51. Separation of church and state.
The misogyny is anti-Jesus. The homophobia is anti-Jesus.
Gotcha. So Paul was incorrect. He corrupted the Bible. So the version of the Bible that we should be reading, we should leave.
No, listen,
so why shouldn't Christians leave Paul out of the Bible then? Why?
Because we also have to give Paul a break. He was just a guy doing the best he could to set up a church. Paul had no idea when he was writing these letters to the early church to set up their hierarchy and who's going to do what and how we're going to build a Christian community of people who love each other, because that's what the religion's about, my friend. Am I right? Paul had no idea.
Yes, I agree that Christianity's foundation is about love.
He had no idea when he was writing these letters that one day his letters would be used by bigots to justify being mean to trans
kids.
Don't
you think that was in the
justify being cruel to women?
Wasn't that within the providence of the Holy Spirit? Isn't that how the Bible came together? If you believe in the Bible, don't you have to believe in the providence of the Holy? Hang on, stop. Hang on. Let me ask the question. Let me ask the question, John.
Yeah.
If it's the case that we can't rely on the fact that it's divine providence and the Holy Spirit, which allowed for the Bible to get put together in the first place, why should you trust any of it? Why?
I don't even understand that question, man. I mean,
Do you believe the Bible's true or not, John?
I believe the Bible has a lot of truth, not necessarily a lot of facts. And being a Christian, I follow
Mhm.
Christ. I'm not a Paulist.
Yeah, but
If
how do you
you're
know
a
what
Paulist,
what Christ is saying was correct if you can't trust the sources?
I'm going by the book we're all using, and I go by the
Do
teachings of
but you're
Christ.
also
That's what
disputing the
informs
sources of
Christianity.
those. You're also disputing the sources of those books
What
and
am I
saying that they're
saying? I'm saying that
unreliable.
Paul isn't Jesus. He's not as
You
good a man as
all
Jesus.
corrupted the Bible. Is the Bible corrupted or not?
I think Paul putting his homophobia and misogyny into the movement is the opposite of Christ, and that's
So
an
the
example
Bible
of it.
is
Yes.
corrupted, yes?
No, I think
No.
Jesus' fan club was corrupted. What are you talking
Okay.
about? The Bible
See,
is a collection of books by a lot of different
your
guys.
epistemology here is wackadoo. So
Hold
the Bible
on a
gets
second. Hold
when
on
the
a
Bible
second.
gets put
Genesis,
together. Yeah,
Andrew,
help me out here. And when the
Andrew,
Bible
your
gets put
whole-
together,
dude,
by the
your
Holy
whole thing
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
hating me, bro. Your whole thing is hating me. Your whole thing is trying to
I
make
haven't
me
said
look
anything
bad.
hateful to you at all.
Dude, your whole thing is trying to make me look bad.
I'm not
Your whole-
interested in the meta debate. I'm interested in the debate.
Andrew, Genesis chapter 1,
Okay.
God creates man and woman in his image
Uh-huh.
side by side at the same time. Genesis chapter 2, God creates man first, can't find a suitable mate, and later goes on to take his rib and make Eve. You can't believe
You
them
mean not
both.
Adam and Steve?
You can't
It
believe
wasn't.
them.
Why wasn't it Adam and Steve?
You're making it a gay thing, and it's not a gay thing. There's
I
two
know it's
different
not a gay
creation
thing.
accounts, dude. So which
Uh-huh.
one is it? I don't really care because I follow the teachings of Jesus, and literal belief in one Genesis chapter or another has no bearing on Christ's directions on how we're supposed to treat each other.
So
And
to
I
get this,
don't follow Paul's homophobia. I
Okay.
follow Christ's love.
because it was corrupt,
I
because he
don't
corrupted
follow
the,
Paul's
because
hang-up
he
about
corrupted the
women.
Bible, right?
Paul made women deacons, and he had hang-ups.
So he
Christ-
corrupted the Bible.
There was no such thing as a Bible when Paul wrote his letters, dude. Paul wrote
Quote.
his letters. Paul wrote
Quote-
his letters. and
Okay, one more time. Quote from
corrupted the
you,
Jesus
John.
movement, as did Rome, and Rome did much worse. Listen, I give Paul a lot of credit. Paul did a lot of great
Paul
things.
is Jesus's conservative PR guy who corrupted the
Yes.
Bible. Quote. End quote by you. Page 51 of
Yes.
Separation of Church
Well,
and Hate.
Yeah, well, the
So did he
misogyny-
corrupt the Bible or did he not corrupt the Bible,
I'll
John?
say he corrupted Christianity. How's that? Is that
Okay,
better for
good.
you?
So
Because
if he corrupted
misogyny-
Christianity, why should we listen to anything he has to say?
Paul, you trying to hate, bro. Paul's misogyny is the opposite of Christ's love.
Mm.
Christ elevated women, taught women, which was illegal. He allowed women to touch him, which was illegal. The longest private conversation he has with anyone was with a Samaritan woman at the well. He wasn't legally allowed to talk to. There were 3 women that went everywhere with the apostles, but the men who wrote it said, oh, it was 12 apostles, 3 groupies. The women are the first ones Jesus appears to.
So
when he-
they all got that wrong too.
The women are the only
so hang
ones-
on, they were all they were
You can't let me
misogynists
finish,
too.
bro. You just
Yeah,
can't let me
Right.
finish. Right?
Weren't they
Women are the
misogynists
only-
too?
The
Let him
women are the
finish at
only.
least.
The whole culture was misogynist, and
Oh, so
Jesus is the reformer.
Why are we taking the word of a bunch of misogynists then?
I follow Jesus. He was the reformer.
But the
He
people who are
treated
telling you
women
what
as
Jesus
equals.
said were misogynists, John.
Is your point that Paul should carry as much weight as Jesus? Because if it's
No,
not,
my
I don't know
point
what
is
your point
that
is.
you're making the claim right now
I
that
don't follow
women
Paul, bro.
that
I follow
women-
Christ.
Okay, yeah. So let me ask a question. The apostles, the initial apostles who were with Jesus Christ, you say the reason that the women weren't counted as apostles is because of the sexism of the people who went ahead and wrote the books.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Too about the
So
Holy
I just
Roman
want to make
Empire.
sure. So I just want to make sure that we're supposed to take the words of Jesus
and
Christ
by
from
the
you,
way,
from
Mary-
the corrupted source of a
and-
bunch of misogynists. Is that
and
right?
Mary Magdalene was never a prostitute either. That was Pope Gregory who made that up. Yes,
I totally agree
men-
with you that she
have
wasn't a
corrupted-
prostitute.
Men have corrupted Christ's ministry for 2,000
The
years.
very apostles who were writing about it,
So if I could just
Paul's
offer a
misogyny does not
not
jive
just
with Christ's
Paul.
love.
We're talking about Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They didn't count any women as being apostles. Only
That's-
John counts them as being
That's
apostles.
why Jesus was such a radical revolutionary reformer, because he treated women as equals, and he talked to the people he wasn't allowed to talk to.
Why
and
didn't he
whoever
make
the
any of them
culture told
apostles
him-
then, John?
Whoever the culture told him he was allowed to despise is who he reached out to.
Then why weren't
From the
any of them apostles, John?
I believe they were apostles, and I think the
Right.
men who wrote the book decided
Right.
they were groupies.
So they're corrupt too. They were corrupt misogynists who can't be trusted, John.
Dude, what's your hang up?
So I
Jesus
think-
treated women as equals.
If I can,
Paul
if I
didn't.
can,
They're
if I
corrupt-
could
They're
try,
Corrupt
gentlemen.
misogynists who can't be.
Okay,
Their
so,
words can't be
Andrew,
trusted.
when Christ treated women as equals. Paul said women must be subservient and submissive and beneath men. Who's right?
No, I don't think so. So why didn't Christ make any women apostles? You say that because the
He
apostles are
did.
lying. You say
He
the
did.
apostles are lying. Okay, name them.
The women were the
Name them.
first ones. Mary and Martha, the
Go
sisters of
ahead and
Lazarus,
show me
and
anywhere in the Bible where
Magdalene.
they're
Hold on,
apostles.
let
The
him go.
women
Let
were
him
the
go.
only ones who didn't abandon Jesus when his friends ran. The women were the first ones he returned to. Christ taught the whole scene where Martha's mad that Jesus is
Can you
teaching
show
Mary.
me a
Mary, it
single
was
Bible
illegal to
passage?
teach a woman. My point is,
Okay,
Jesus
just gonna wait for you
treated,
to. Okay, go ahead.
Christ
Hold on.
treated women as equals.
Mhm.
Paul said women must be subservient to men. Who do you follow? I follow
Okay,
Christ.
so John, right? Can you show me any biblical passage that names them apostles of Jesus?
No, the men who wrote the
No,
Bible don't name them as
because you
apostles.
made it up, John. You made
Yes,
it
I
up
made it
because it
up. There are
suits.
women
Yeah,
who went
you
everywhere
made
with
it
them.
up, John.
But who's to say? Because who's to say it's not all made up?
Then
Dude, it's
why
a
should we
Bible.
trust any of the source, John?
Because I'm going by the book, and the women that went
You're not
everywhere
going by
with
the
Jesus
book.
are
You
the 12.
you keep on adding to the book.
Women actually financed Jesus's ministry. Magdalene was
Can you
one
show
of the
me?
investors in his movement.
Show me an apostle biblically from that's a woman. Go ahead.
I don't care, man.
Yeah,
I don't
I
care.
know you
My
don't.
point is,
But listen,
okay, so
yeah,
Andrew,
it makes
please
no
tell me
sense.
what you believe.
Hold on,
Christ
gentlemen. Hold
Christ
on.
no
treated,
sense.
Let's
Andrew,
reset. Get to a question.
Christ treated women as equals. Paul said women are below men.
They were
Who
such
do you
equals that
follow?
there wasn't a single apostle that
Hold
you can
on.
point to biblically.
I
Not
don't
one.
Let him
believe
finish.
who Christ treated women as equals. He broke the laws of his faith to let women touch him. He taught women, which
Why
was
didn't he
not
make any
legal
of them
at the time.
apostles, sir?
Women were the first ones he returned to after his death. Paul says women must be subservient. Who do you follow? Is Paul right that women should not ever hold authority over a man? Because
Well,
Paul
here
also
I'll tell you.
Paul
I'll tell you
also
as soon as
makes
you're done
women
rambling.
deacons. So Paul contradicts himself.
Yeah. So anyway, when you say this, you claim that there's some sort of equality going on between the sexes according to Jesus, and yet you don't have a single biblical passage which points to any of
Does
them being.
God
Hey,
like men
hang on, my
better?
turn, John. My turn, John. You can't point to a single biblical passage by your own admission of a single woman being an apostle of Jesus Christ named. Your entire excuse for this is because the original writers of this were such misogynists that they just conveniently left that out.
Women aren't
And
counted as
hang
equal.
on, John, my turn. And isn't it convenient, John, that they happen to leave this out so that you can have your presentism
This is the
worldview
case
that
you're
Jesus
making.
was a big old femoid. He was a big old
Yeah.
feminist, even though you can't actually show me a
This is-
single. Hang on, John. Calm down, John. You
This is
can't
really
show
important
me
to you.
a single
Hold on.
female apostle. And you just made up that they are apostles. You just made it up. And then you claim that we can still trust those same sources about what Jesus said, John.
Does God love men and women equally, Andrew?
Yes, ontologically, men and women are equal, but we
Then
have hierarchies
then
established
God's a
by God.
feminist.
No,
Then
he's not.
God's a
That's not what
feminist.
feminism is.
Does
Feminism,
God love men and women equally?
That's not what feminism is, John.
Feminism means equal access.
No,
equal
it doesn't.
Rights.
No,
Yes,
it doesn't.
does, my too. Andrew, may I ask you, do you believe that women should be in subservience to men, as Paul says? Are men better?
Yes.
Are men better?
No, not ontologically
better than women?
Not ontologically
Why
better.
should
No.
men? Why should women live in?
You see
submission
how
to
you
men?
won't even let me answer the question you asked me, John? You see why we need a timer? You won't even let me answer the very question you're asking me.
Why
So if you
should
just
women
calm
be in
down, if
submission?
you calm down for 2 seconds, I'll explain.
I promise
Okay,
I'm
so
calm.
the way that it works is I don't know why God does this. You don't know why God does this, but he sets up hierarchies. God
Oh.
works within hierarchies, and
Oh.
that's what we have is hierarchies. Yes,
Oh.
that is indeed the case, John. And so
Really?
the thing that's really interesting here is when we're talking about the ontology of men and women, do I think that they're equal morally? I do. But do I think that inside of hierarchies, they have very different roles than men? Yes. What's my proof for that? Well, they can reproduce, John, and men can't. And
It's
so
about
that's why
submission. It's
within
about submission, Andrew.
the
About women's submission.
see what I mean? You're a
hold on,
filibuster
hold on.
machine. You don't want to hear
Hold
the answer, John, because it blows out your worldview. Feminism is actually not just about egalitarianism. It's about the egalitarianism and the deconstruction of patriarchal systems. Otherwise, how could they be oppressed if there's no oppressor? The oppressor's the evil men, John. They're the oppressor. They're the evil ones. The evil patriarchy has to be the oppressor. Otherwise, what would you need feminism to equalize you against? It's going to be against
You're
the evil
using
patriarchy, John.
May I speak? You're using the Bible to claim that women are inferior, and then you're making fun of people
I didn't
that don't
claim.
like the patriarchy.
Tell me how I said women were inferior, John.
Okay, why is there a hierarchy? Where does God say women must be
Because
submissive to men?
because
Where does
John,
God say women
yeah,
must be submissive
well,
to
no,
men?
it's literally said in the New Testament. You've been quoting Paul yourself. What do you mean?
Where does God say it? Not Paul. Where does
We
God
could,
say
oh,
it?
well, we could go through the Old Testament as well if you want to see what
And
women's
where does
roles
Christ
were.
say it, my Christian brother in Christ?
Yeah,
Where
so
does Christ say it?
here's the thing that's really funny. What do you think that Christ needed to say when he's talking about the equal ontological value of men and women? I agree with that statement. But the hierarchical
So why are we
structure of
fighting
how,
about this?
because human societies, John, still work better when men are in leadership roles and dominant roles and physical roles, and women work best when they're not in those roles. And that's why you establish these hierarchies in society and move society towards those hierarchical roles, John.
So submission.
That's not,
Paul's word.
it's not
Paul's
submission.
word
It's
is submission.
It's
Women should
cooperation,
not.
John.
So do you agree with St. Paul that women should not hold any authority over
I
a
think
man?
women, I think wives should submit to their husbands. Yes, I agree. But it also states, John, you conveniently leave this out, that husbands are supposed to submit to their wives. Doesn't it say that, John?
But it also says that women should be in submission to man, that a woman should have
Yeah.
authority
What's
over
it?
man. And
This
a
is
woman
what's
should not be
interesting
allowed
in
to-
church.
Please
Yes,
let me
in
finish. A woman
church.
should not be allowed to
Yes.
speak in church. Do you agree with
Yeah.
that, Andrew? Because
Yeah,
that's
in
not
church,
Jesus,
yes.
that's Paul. This is all
Yes.
Paul you're following.
Yes, in church.
And I'm
You know
going
what's
with
really
Christ.
funny is that Paul seemed to be following Jesus Christ just fine. Jesus Christ did not give any women the authority to be apostles. The only way that you could prove that, John, is to just make it up.
So Paul makes Phoebe a deacon, but says women can't have authority over
And
men.
what's a
How do you
deacon?
explain that?
What's a deacon, John? What is
deacon
it?
is a leadership role in the church.
Okay, what specifically was this deacon supposed
A
to do?
leadership role in the church.
What
Deacons
was
minister
this
to-
deacon supposed to do, Phoebe?
Paul doesn't say what Phoebe does.
Yeah,
What I'm
exactly.
saying to you is,
Now I'm going
in
to tell
one
you.
line,
Now
in
I'm
one
going to tell
line,
you,
Paul is
John.
misogynist, and in one
let
line,
John
Paul
finish.
is misogynist, and in
Mhm.
other passages, Paul is I'm not going to fight
No.
you, bro. I don't hate you. In other passages, Paul is
Yeah.
uplifting women. In other passages, Paul is celebrating women.
Yeah.
He talks about how certain women saved his life, how certain women funded his church, just like certain women helped fund Jesus's church. What I'm saying is, why do we believe the parts where Paul says women should be submissive to men, but then don't take the parts where he ordains women to be in authority over men with the same heft?
I'll explain.
Because
Because he
Jesus
doesn't.
does none of this.
He doesn't.
And Jesus breaks the laws of
explain it to you.
Judaism
Go ahead and
to
explain,
treat
Andrew.
women as equals.
Yeah.
Please.
So I'll explain this to you. So early deaconship, right? If you go back through Orthodox Church history and Catholic Church history, nudity was a way that people used to be baptized, and early female deacons were there so that the men didn't have to be exposed to the female nudity when they were doing baptism. They did not have positions of authority over confessionals or over men in the traditional
Okay.
sense of clergy. John, you're wrong, John.
So women
How
have
come
to be
you didn't? How
submissive
come you
to
didn't,
that.
John?
Women
How come you didn't know
listen,
that,
man,
John?
My mother was a Catholic nun.
Well, she didn't teach you very well, John.
No, she actually did, because you're following Paul instead of Christ. And
I'm following
you're
both.
the one saying that women should be submissive to men. I follow Christ, who does not say that. Christ broke the laws of his own Jewish faith to teach women and hold them as equals. He allowed women to touch him. He allowed women who were not Jewish to talk to him.
But that's not what's in contention
goes
here.
outside of the tribe. No, I know. I still listen. You just want to fight me, man. But what I'm saying is, I don't
I'm
follow
fighting your
Paul.
worldview, John,
And
not you.
Paul's hang-ups got poured into his letters, and I give Paul a lot of slack. He had no way of knowing when he was setting up the early church that his hang-ups about dudes hooking up with dudes would one day be used to justify so much cruelty that is forbidden by the love of Christ. And again, homophobia is an insult to the Sermon on the Mount, and anyone who claims to follow Leviticus is lying to you. It's just a book that people pick and choose to justify their cruelty. So again, man, I go with the love of
This
Jesus.
is just rambling.
We're
It's not
keeping it on-
contending with what I'm saying.
Well,
You're
let's
not
bring it back to
contending at all
Christian
with what I'm saying.
Well, let's
Yeah,
bring it back
okay,
to
we can bring it back to Christian nationalism, but I would
because
like to
this is
point out.
exactly what you'll see. You'll see
Yeah,
in nationalism.
let's bring it back to Christian
that
nationalism.
some
Hang on.
Okay,
groups
go
are better
ahead,
than
John.
others. And
But let me tie this off with this.
A version of Christ's ministry where
Yeah.
some groups are elevated, and it's
Mhm.
not about humility. It's always about power, and it's always about we're
Hey.
the ones who should be in control.
Guess
The
what, John?
opposite of Christ's message.
Yeah, here's a really funny thing here, John. Besides the fact that you have an incoherent epistemology, which I just pointed out, and it makes no
you
sense at
hurt
all. But let me point out. But let me just point this out, that what you just said is true of every political ideology which has ever existed ever.
What exactly?
that what happens with political power is that it gets consolidated in the hands of often bad people at some point, which cripples whatever that political power is. That's
Yes, well, that's what I'm
every
saying.
form of it which has ever existed, John, including whatever
That's
secular
why
ethics you
Christian
propose.
nationalism doesn't work. Hitler proved Christian
Then
nationalism
no
doesn't work.
ideology works,
And it
John.
always winds up, but no, I'm sorry. Whenever you fuse Christ's movement with power, it always leads
Whenever
to
you
something-
infuse any ideology with power, it does
whenever
that,
you
John.
merge, when you merge Christ's movement of humility with authoritarian power, it always leads to someone telling you why this group is above this group.
Can you tell me
Always. And
any
that's
authoritarian power
anti-Jesus.
that's not true of? Any
No, I
authoritative
think
power?
authoritarian power sucks, man. I think authoritarian power is a racket, and it hoodwinks.
So no
working
law,
class
John?
conservative
No
guys.
law, no government, none of that? Communist
I'm all
utopia?
government. You asked me. No, I'm not a communist. You really need to make me a bad guy all the time, bro.
I'm not even
You
trying to
asked
make
about
it.
authoritarian
This is
government.
back to the debate, John. If you can't name a single ideology that it's not true of, that it doesn't consolidate in the hands of a few after X amount of generations of running, because it's how nepotism works socially, intersocially. There's not a single ideology that you can say has won or has not failed. So what is the counter ideology that you propose that you think isn't going to fail when Christian nationalism will, John?
Well,
What is
personally,
it?
I'm a big fan of living in a free democracy where we vote based on the teachings of Christ. I'm glad you asked that question, because I find that if you actually prioritize the things Christ told us to prioritize, if we as a society stop giving massive tax benefits to the wealthiest Nazarenes, if we stop getting tangled into hatred and deals that only enrich the obscenely rich already, but we focus on the margins as Christ commands, if we as a nation voted the teachings of Jesus in the ballot box, we would help the poor. We would fight poverty, and poverty hurts all of us, including rich people. And if everyone's doing better, everyone's doing better. We would fight for a living wage. We would fight for health care for all Americans, because that is the gospel. Jesus commanded his followers to heal the sick. That's why so many churches built hospitals, because that was Jesus's marching order. I mean, when you look at the fact that
Can we just get back to the democracy part first?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I would vote the teachings of Christ to take care of the least of us, because that is also sound economic policy.
Do you agree with me?
The billionaires will still be fine, but imagine if we voted based on what Christ told us to do and not the stuff we think he told us to do.
Well,
not the stuff
John,
Paul talked about or the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Voting on Christ's values.
So, but John, just back to your system of democracy, of voting democracy for Christ's values. I am assuming that non-Christians, secularists, and people who hate Christ can vote inside of this democracy you propose, right, John?
Oh, some of the best Christ followers I've known are atheists, and some of the most godless heathens are very loud, proud Christians. Yeah.
So, can you answer my question? Are all of those people going to be able to vote in your
By the way,
So, John, how is this not just the status quo then, John?
The thing about Jesus' teachings.
How's that not the status quo, John?
Because we're not doing it.
We're not doing what? Everybody goes in and votes their whatever they want to vote for.
What I'm saying, yes, my utopia, if you will, is not a nation where we violate the teachings of Christ and violate the Constitution to have one class of people that announces we're better than everyone because God thinks we are. The spiritual narcissism is it's going to kill you, man. For me, I believe in a society where if we really did follow the teachings of Christ, who never had representative democracy, Jesus lived and died under European military.
This is not telling me how this is different than the status quo, John. It's just more rambling, John.
Because voting to help the poor and end poverty, voting to help the sick.
Can people do that right now, John? Can they do it right this second? Okay, so then it's the status quo, John. You're only proposing the same. Your proposition for a system. You know, your proposition for the system is the same exact system we have right now. Same one.
No, actually, it's not. No,
give me a single distinction then. Give me a single distinction.
Progressive taxation, like Adam Smith and Eisenhower taught us. Progressive taxation.
So power. You want power, John.
Billionaires are laughing at hardworking white men. Billionaires are laughing at you and using Hunter Biden and brown immigrants to get you guys to vote against your own poor interest. This is how trickle-down economics has always run a con on working people. And it's more hard-working guys who are being suckered by the plantation owners to go fight for Confederacy that does not serve them. It only serves the rich.
So, John, what you want is you want power so that you can stop all that, right?
You got to make me a bad guy. That's the only thing you want. This whole conversation.
Can you answer my question, John? Isn't your system just a proposition for power to stop the bad people from doing the bad stuff?
No, I want us to take care of each other. I want us to take
by
care
stopping
of the
the
sick. I want
bad,
us to take
evil,
care of the
rich
poor.
billionaires who are trying to import tons and tons of brown people or hurt the
No, I
working
didn't
class, or
say they
convince
were
the
evil,
working
and
class,
they're
convince the working class that they're being hurt by them. You
well,
are
they are.
proposing,
They
you're
are.
proposing a voting system
You know they are.
in place with a voting block so that you can form a voting block for the purposes of political power to make changes, aren't you, John? Isn't that what you're actually proposing right now?
Dude, you would like
ahead,
me
John.
so much. We would get along so well, and
Can you
you'd
just
like have
answer the
such a
question, bro?
like I'd be like so friendly to you, bro, and you'd
Just
be like
answer the
trying
question,
so
John.
hard to
Stay
call
on
me
point.
names because I know the hate is important. The hate is so important to you.
Yeah. So anyway, the question,
I
John.
want a society. I think a Christian society is what Christ said it was. That if you pretend to be Christian,
Oh yeah,
but you
where did
don't,
Christ advocate for
Hold on.
democracy,
Don't-
John?
Hold on, let him answer.
he didn't have it. But
Exactly.
when you look at the
Just making it up.
Matthew
Yeah.
25, the judgment of nations, is Jesus giving his policy prescription to society. And he is telling you that his fake followers are the ones who claim they follow him, but they don't, as societies, take care of the poor, take care of the sick, welcome the stranger, and are kind to those in prison. Jesus is literally telling you what you need to do to earn the label a Christian nation. And his entire movement is about humility. But thinking you're better than someone else or that you deserve power because God likes you better, that's idolatry. That's a
Then,
big
John,
finger to
all you're
Christ's
doing
entire
here is
movement,
all you're doing here is
What?
refuting your own argument, because what you're
No.
proposing right this second is your proposition is to create and advocate for a voting bloc, which will then get into power so that they can implement your agenda. And you just laid out what your
No,
agenda
Jesus
is.
is-
Hang on,
Jesus
hang
is-
on,
Jesus
hang
is
on, hang on,
agenda.
hang on, hang on,
Jesus is
John.
agenda.
That's what you want to implement is your agenda via the
Jesus.
utilization of a voting block. So in my opening, remember when I said for John, this is actually about power. What you just admitted to, John, is that it is. It's just about
No, man.
you wanting
No.
a power block to enforce your will,
No.
and you don't want Christians to do the same thing back.
No, it's really about you needing to do this whole shtick of yours. Can you please tell me what teaching of Christ does the MAGA
Are we
movement
gonna
fight
are we
for
gonna do this
legislatively?
again? Is this debate about the MAGA movement?
Yeah.
What
we
teaching of
can-
Christ? What teaching of Christ does right-wing Christianity fight for legislatively in government, please?
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's a really good one. So I think that the best way to uplift the impoverished of the nation is most certainly not to have mass migration from countries that hate Christians, John. Especially if they're going to
No, no.
bankrupt our
What
social.
teaching of
Hang on,
Christ?
and especially if
What
they're
teaching of
going.
Christ do you
I just
fight for?
told you, if you want to uplift the poor,
hold on.
if you want to really take care of poor people, you don't do that by giving them money. That's not how you take care of the poor.
Yes,
You
you
take
do.
care of the poor by uplifting them so that they can take care of themselves.
Direct action. The Bible's not about thoughts and prayers. Read James, the brother.
I'm
of
talking
Jesus.
about
It's not
direct action.
about direct
What problem? What
action.
I'm
Not
talking about direct
passively
action.
hoping, not passively hoping someone else will come along and help.
You
the
know, you
poor.
got to
It's
at
about
least
you
let me.
doing
Can I get the proposition out first before you criticize it? The truth is that the very
Please.
same thing you're talking about with nationalized healthcare and things like this, the countries that you would point to who have the nationalized healthcare don't have mass migration, John, because it completely crushes your social healthcare system. All of the Nordic states you'd point to utilize their model, they don't have mass migration there, John. They don't have it.
Oh, it's about the brown
It's not.
people.
It's
Brown
not
people,
there.
right?
No, 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 no,
Brown
no,
people.
no, no. It wouldn't matter.
Brown
It wouldn't matter what color they
people.
were, John. What
Ooh,
matters
where's
is that
Obama's
if
birth
you see how you
certificate?
won't let me even
Ooh.
get it out, John.
Nah, dude, you're
let's-
But
too
at
racist
least,
yet.
at
You know
least
you're-
let me get it out so that you can then
Go ahead,
critique
please.
it.
Please.
So anyway,
Tell me about
can
the
you
Nordic
can you
states.
explain? Can you
Purity.
explain? Yeah. So they don't have mass migration for a reason. Because if you mass migrate in people and then they're getting free medical service from you, somebody has to pay for it, John. It's either going to be the
Welcome
state.
stranger,
It's
bro.
either going to be the
Welcome
state or the
stranger.
private sector.
Why is Jesus
So the thing
wrong?
is we already
Why
have
is Jesus
John.
wrong?
I didn't say it
Hold
was
on,
wrong,
hold on,
John.
hold
I'm
on.
saying
I'm-
you're wrong. It is in the implementation of the policies that you'd want to see from Christian ethics. The best thing for Christian ethics would be for you to uplift the current poor we have instead of creating new amounts of poor. So everybody has a lot less instead of some people having more than others, John.
What is the right wing doing to help the current poor we have?
Oh my God. Let's start with
Donald
the
Trump is
veterans programs. Let's just
kicking
start with the
20
veteran
million people
program.
off of
Stop,
Medicaid.
everyone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and set a timer because we're getting a little out of hand and it's just becoming chaotic. So I'm just gonna do a
One
one more
teaching of
minute
Christ.
timer. I believe we left off, John was answering the question. I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. It should automatically restart after every minute goes off. Please be mindful of it, follow through on it. If not, I can just mute you. All right, go ahead, John.
So I'm so sorry. I don't want to talk over anyone. When my clock is ticking, then I can talk. I'm just trying to get it right. My first time here. Thank you.
That's okay.
What am I responding to? I mean, I asked you what teachings of Christ the MAGA movement or Trumpism fights for on a legislative basis. Right now, this budget calls for kicking 20 million low-income and disabled people off of Medicaid. When Jesus commands you to welcome the stranger, it sure doesn't sound fun to me. It sounds scary. It sounds very unpleasant. When he commands us to go to the margins and take care of the least of those, it sounds horrifying. Why is Trump right and Jesus is wrong? That's the only question. Thank you. That's it. No any more time.
Yeah. So the problem is that that's 10 minutes, by the way. But the problem with this is that this is a bifurcation. Neither option here that you have proposed is actually true. You ask, how is Trump right? Jesus is wrong, as though they're in contention with each other. They're not in contention with each other. You're saying that Medicaid, a social safety net, which is there's going to be possibly some people who get kicked off of it due to the new budget system. We have no idea if that's even the case. There's not a single person who's been kicked off of Medicaid right now under Trump. Not one person, John, has been kicked off of Medicaid. John, why are you talking during my time, John? See why I told you you're a filibuster machine?
You're right.
You can't help
it.
So anyway, the point here is that also all you got to do is look at the parable of the talents. Those who would return in spiritual wealth, right? What their master gives them. In this case, Trump made an office, a spiritual office. Trump went on and he declared that there's only two genders which are allowed. No more of this heinous mutilation of children, which has been going on from the trans ideological perspective. I could go on and on and on when we go into the bounties. There's no Democrat operatives you can point to have any of the fruits of the spirit that you would be looking for. Not one, John. Name one.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. I'm not a Democrat. I've never belonged to a political party. I've never once belonged to a political party. Again, I asked you to give me one teaching of Christ, and again, how are you all helping the poor? Again, it's not a few; it's 20 million. This is why our government is shut down. I have never been a Democrat. I think they walk around in clown shoes, and they are very far from the teachings of Christ. But on the issues of caring for the poor, welcoming the stranger, healthcare, opposing racism, treating women with respect, they are light years closer to the teachings of Jesus and the Gospels than the policies of Donald Trump, which continues to be the brazen junk wagging opposite of everything Jesus commands of us. I don't really see why those of us who've read the Gospels should believe that people who endorse Donald Trump respect the teachings of Christ. You are part of a movement that's trying to make the poor more poor and the rich more rich, and that part has been done.
It's hilarious that you say that, when considering Bernie Sanders said that it's mass migration's a Koch brother conspiracy because it broke the back of the very labor unions you want to see inside the United States, John. Broke the back of them. It used to be that Democrats were the ones who were anti-immigration because of that particular problem until they realized that they would get a voting block out of it. The next thing to point out here is you didn't actually give me any parables at all that any politicians or a single teaching of Jesus Christ, any politician that you would support follows. You claim that you read the Gospels, but you reject so much of the very Gospels that you read. You claim that there's women who are apostles. You can't point to that. You claim that Paul was in a direct contradiction to Christ's message. You can't prove that either. All that you've done is make assertion after assertion. Your epistemology was completely devastated because it's incoherent. It makes no sense. You can't explain it. On top of that, when we get into the actual policy prescriptions, the best way to uplift people, John, is not to give them money. It's to create the conditionals where they can make the money for themselves. That is the best way to alleviate poverty, not giving them free handouts.
John.
Right. Okay, we give billionaires handouts. We give oil companies $600 million a year just for being you. This is all a racket, and this is how conservative men and women are brainwashed to be furious when we do direct action to help the poor and then turn a blind eye when we just shovel money to billionaires who already are doing just fine. So the immigration scam, the way you know that it's a scam and they're lying to you is that if they actually wanted border crossings to stop, they would start locking up the white people who do all the hiring. There is a giant help wanted sign at our border. Our economy is propped up by an exploited brown-skinned labor force, and Wall Street doesn't want to see this labor force go away. Donald Trump is the only president to have hired undocumented workers in 2 different centuries. He did it to avoid having to pay a living wage to an American worker. It is a racist scam. If they wanted the border crossings to stop, they'd lock up the employers. The Republicans protect them. That's how you know.
Yeah, it's really funny. Democrats weren't locking up any employers at all, John, and Kamala Harris wouldn't have either. Remember that woman that you campaigned for, that you say, even though you say you're not a Democrat, but you went and you actually went to a fundraiser and raised money on her behalf and called yourself a liberal Catholic? Would you like for me to pull that up again? So the thing is really
awesome.
funny. Yeah, exactly. Don't tell me you're not a Democrat operative. You were operating on behalf of Democrats. On top of that, let's just point out very quickly, if you want to talk about millionaires and billionaires who are scamming us, right? And you bring up Trump because you have TDS, even though this debate's not about Trump. The Christian right is simply saying that we can alleviate poverty the best possible way by creating the conditionals for people to take themselves out of it. Millionaires and billionaires are the ones scamming you on immigration. They're the ones who want all the cheap labor, John. They want the cheap labor, as much cheap labor as they can possibly get. Why wouldn't they? Why would millionaires and billionaires be against unfettered illegal immigration when they're the ones who are the primary benefactors of it? We're the ones speaking truth to power, not you.
John, to you.
Well, Ronald Reagan, of course, is the one who wanted open borders and who gave amnesty. There are no Democrats who are fighting for that right now. And again, this all comes down to the fact that people don't want to welcome the stranger. They don't want to do what Jesus commands of us. They want to go around Jesus, either back to the Old Testament or forward to Paul, because Jesus is too inconveniently woke for a lot of people. And I get it. I understand how threatening that can be. But again, I talked about immigration and you didn't answer any of the points. Donald Trump has hired undocumented workers in 2 different centuries. Undocumented workers built Trump Tower here in New York City because he didn't want to pay American workers a living wage. It is all about exploitation. And again, if they really cared about the border crossings, if you start locking up these white people who hire lawn work, you'll always see they arrested 400 illegals in the meatpacking plant, but they never arrest the guys counting the money in the back. That's the fraud, and Trump is protecting agricultural workers who are undocumented right now with a carve-out.
Wow, this is great. John says, oh, these billionaires and millionaires just want to get you to hate all the brown people. At the same time, he points out a billionaire utilizing illegal immigrants for the purposes of exploiting their labor, which is really interesting that the Christian right, who wants the billionaires and millionaires to not exploit the labor of illegal immigrants by locking our border down like we should, which would also stop drug trafficking, human trafficking, the most amount of human trafficking, by the way, John, especially if kids, comes from across that southern border. No, we're supposed to welcome in the stranger with the fentanyl, right, John? We're supposed to welcome in the stranger who's doing the human trafficking. We're supposed to just welcome them in, or are we supposed to have laws within the confines of Christian ethics? We know that that's immoral and wrong, and if we can do things to prevent it, like lock down our southern border, where you have a government who's giving incentives to their own people to do that by working with the cartels, ought we not do that, John? John says, well, no. No, we shouldn't. We should just welcome them with open arms. It's insane and contradictory.
I don't say we should welcome them with open arms. I've never said that. Jesus says that. I've never said it. Jesus says that. Actually, I'm so sorry. Jesus commands that.
So Jesus wanted us to welcome them.
Hold on,
and Jesus is not ambiguous. God of the Old Testament commands to welcome the stranger and to treat the alien as one of your own, and to never mistreat the alien. Those folks are in this country because people like Donald Trump offer them jobs. The Republican Party needs you to not see them as human, so they will call them illegals, which is a racist slur. You'll never hear anyone on Fox News refer to a white lawbreaker as an illegal. Donald Trump has all these felony convictions. They won't call him an illegal. That word is specifically used as a slur for brown people who are more accurately called Christian refugees. I didn't say welcome them with open arms. Jesus did. I don't pretend to be as good as Jesus. I just object to criminalizing migrants by calling them mean slurs.
You see how silly and contradictory this is? You didn't refute a single point that I put out there, refuted each one of yours, and I'll refute all of these too. The reason that they're called illegals and not white people who are here is because the white people who are here usually aren't illegals, John. They
only call brown people illegals.
Hold on.
Because it's only the brown people who are here illegally for the most part, John. There's very few white people here in the United States who are here illegally, John. It's not even in the same universe. And here's why. It's really simple why, too, John. Really simple why. Because we border. We have a border, direct southern border with Mexico. We don't have a direct border with Europe, so they can't really cross in here very much. So almost everybody who crosses in here comes in from Hispanic nations, and most of them who cross in illegally cross in from those nations. That's why they're called illegals, not because people are trying to be meansy pants to them, but because they're trying to say that we don't want illegal immigrants in our nation because of all the problems that I just listed, them working with cartels for human trafficking, drug violations, things which you say Jesus would support. He would support you welcoming those people with open arms. It's foolish, John. Makes no sense.
John, to you.
That's a lie. I wouldn't say that, and Jesus wouldn't support that. The majority of fentanyl comes in through the ports. It is not carried in by people who are crossing the border. I'd like to think that if I were trying to escape the violence of our drug war, I would love my kid enough to take the risk and do the journey. But again, they only call the brown ones illegals. The majority of undocumented immigrants, and please, folks, please don't believe me, look all this up. The majority of undocumented immigrants in this country are people who overstay their visas, not people who cross the border. There are over 20,000 undocumented Irish in this country. Do you hear anything about them? Anything about the undocumented Russians? There's thousands and thousands. No, it's only one kind. I don't see a lot of undocumented Asian people being hassled either. Again, Donald Trump hired them in 2 different centuries. They need you to not see these people as people. Jesus commands you to welcome them, and God commands you to never mistreat them.
Well, John just lied to you multiple times. First and foremost, when it comes to fentanyl, quote, most fentanyl was smuggled into the United States via the southern border, according to federal law enforcement government reports as of 2022, 2023, 2024. Now, I'm guessing that we don't.
Hold, please.
The southern border, John. The southern border. You were trying to make it sound like that wasn't the case. Otherwise, what were you arguing against? What would you even have been arguing against? When I say it comes in through the southern border, you say, nah, it comes in through the port. Why would you even make the argument if you were agreeing with me that that's where it comes in? Makes no sense. Caught in a lie right there. Not only that,
no, it's not a lie.
Let's point out. Let us point out that the majority of the illegal immigrants, when you're talking about the overstaying of visas versus people who are crossing in illegally, you're talking about 2 different scenarios. Again, where the assignment of illegal immigrant, you're talking about Hispanics crossing illegally, they're not overstaying their visas, John. That's why we call them something different.
Go ahead, John.
You so need them to be subhuman. It's like you need them to be this vulgar noun, illegal, so we don't see them as human. And this is what Christian nationalism does. You'll have the leaders who will tell you that there's this tiny little powerless group, has no power over your society, but that's essential to our entire way of life, and only I can keep you safe. Over 90% of fentanyl seized by U.S. Customs and Border is intercepted at legal crossings or at interior vehicle checkpoints. This includes land border crossings. Drug trafficking organizations primarily hide fentanyl inside passenger vehicles, or they commingle it in legitimate cargo on tractor trailers. Federal data shows U.S. citizens are the primary couriers for smuggling fentanyl. From 2018 to 2024, U.S. citizens accounted for 80% of convicted fentanyl traffickers in Southwest border districts. Again, it's so important. You can't follow Jesus, so you got to make him evil. You just have to do it because Jesus is too hard.
Yeah, nobody made him evil. What's hilarious about this is, sure, they're U.S. citizens who have tons of Hispanic family members in Mexico who are often threatened by cartels. He leaves that part out. Isn't that funny? Check out what the racial demographics are of those smugglers, John, and then get back to me. And my point is that the government of Mexico utilizes its own state apparatuses in order to work with cartels to push drugs across the border. Whether or not they're being pushed by people who are U.S. citizens who happen to have family members in Mexico being threatened by said cartels has nothing to do with anything. When I'm talking about illegal trafficking, it is also illegals doing this, and it's also illegals who are doing human trafficking back and forth and gun running. So the thing is like, we still have to have a border policy, John. We can't have open borders. I don't know why you think Jesus wants to contribute to drug trafficking, contribute to human trafficking and things like this without having staunch borders. That's insane. It makes no sense, and it's never made sense, John.
Go ahead, John.
Release the Epstein files, right? We agree? We agree?
Yeah.
Release the Epstein files. All the names, right? We agree?
Yeah. All of them.
It's kind of weird that Donald Trump is blocking it so hard. and playing dumb about it after promising for years to release it, because I'm with you on sex trafficking.
That's quite the pivot, John.
No, I'm picking up on your exact words. Only 8% of fentanyl seizures occur between ports of entry, typically involving border patrol stops or abandoned drugs. 8% occurs for border crossings. The rest occur through ports. Okay, so that's what the fact was. And you know, again, I mean, I get that you really hate these people, but these people are living here. They're paying taxes. Most of them are nonviolent, and our economy would collapse without them. And Donald Trump's hired them in 2 different centuries. Y'all are still being played for suckers. They will never go after the employers. They won't.
Yeah, got it. So second-class tiered citizen slaves. Got it.
No,
That's
not
what
I want.
that's what
Hold on,
John's
he's-
advocating for. After
No.
all, they're here propping up our
please.
economy. How are they propping up our economy? Because we don't have to pay any of the social taxes, right? They don't have to pay Social Security tax. The employer doesn't have to pay Social Security tax. They don't have to pay into the medical system. They don't have to do any of that. And so what ends up happening is that's what creates the incentive for these employers to hire them in the first place. Yes, I agree. You should go after employers, but there's laws on the books to go after the employers. Biden didn't go after any of them. And Biden proposed amnesty, by the way. And
No, he did
Kamala
not.
Harris, yes, he did. And Kamala Harris, after him, would also have proposed amnesty. She had talked about it very openly, the very woman you campaigned for. So all you're doing is bullshitting us, John. And you keep on saying that it's because I hate these people. Quote, Andrew hates these people. Based on what? Me wanting to have staunch border policies for my fellow countrymen? That means that I hate somebody else? Based on what, John? Prove I hate anybody. Prove it.
Go ahead.
I don't care, man. Anyone standing on U.S. soil is legally allowed to claim asylum here. And a lot of these people are fleeing from our drug war. You know, I've done shows for the troops in Central America. We have troops in Central America because our drug war is still happening. And these people come here either because they're fleeing violence or they come here to work for white people. Those are the 2 categories. This is a tiny, powerless minority that holds no power over the rest of us. But this is what authoritarians have to do, right? 20 years ago, it was Muslims. Now it's immigrants and it's trans kids. I do not support this exploitation. I think they should be paid a living wage. Ronald Reagan supported an open border. That was his word. He gave amnesty, his word. He supported open border because he said then they can come here and work and then go home when they're done. Undocumented workers pay state, local, and income tax. They pay billions, 4.5 billion a year in taxes, and they are not gang members. They are your nannies. They are often nice people.
$4.5 billion a year is a rounding error when it comes to our military budget, John. Give me a break.
They pay taxes.
By the way, the thing
They
is
pay
funny
taxes.
is they
Hold
avoid
on,
the ones
hold
that
on,
matter the
hold on.
most, which is the social safety nets you want so bad for people. They're not paying those, John. That's what's so funny. They're getting around those. And this is why employers want them. They don't want to match the Social Security. They don't want to match any of these things that they normally would have to match. That's why they hire them under the table as illegals, John, right? They even have these seasonal scams all set up. And the thing is like, yeah, we do need to shut that down. But the second we get anybody who's staunch on the border, you start making up lies about how South America is suddenly war-torn and these people need amnesty. They need amnesty from war-torn South America where there's no wars going on. Right. So what are you talking? What are they fleeing from exactly here, John? They're not fleeing from war-torn nations. You can't say they're economic migrants because you can't apply for amnesty because you're really poor. That's not how the law works. So what are they fleeing from here exactly? What, John?
Gang violence, many of them. And many of them are coming here to work for white people. Those are the 2 categories.
Gang violence.
That's yes, gang violence.
All these
And again,
people are apply
Hold
for
on,
amnesty because of gang
Andrew,
violence, John.
It is his time. It is.
Okay.
listen, they all have their different reasons. Most of them come here to work for white people, right? I mean, those are the 2 main reasons. And if you're standing on American soil, you're allowed to claim asylum. Jesus taught a global version of God's love. It was not tribal. His message was not about one nation better. And God of the Bible does not seem to really give a damn about the invisible lines in the ground we create to separate our tribes. Do I think we should have restrictions on who comes in the country? Of course I do. I object to the criminalization of migrants, this need to have a villainous underclass that, again, oh my God, when I was a kid, it was the feminists, and then it was the gays who want to get married, and then it was the Muslims. There's always got to be a minority that somehow you're convinced you're allowed to hate. Jesus had one of those. It was the Samaritans, and he consistently makes the Samaritans the good guys in his stories to go beyond who your tribe says is good and bad.
The God of the Bible did care an awful lot about borders and created promised lands. In fact, that's how much he cared about borders. I don't know what you're talking about there, John. Again, makes no sense. Your incoherent epistemology. On top of all of that, let's just point out that if it was truly the case that you cared about the poor and you wanted to uplift them from the curse of poverty, then what you would do is set up the conditionals in the nation to actually do that. And one of the ways you don't do that is by bankrupting our own medical system, by flooding it with people who aren't supposed to be here in the first place.
Brown
Also,
people.
they have their
Hold on,
own
please.
nation. Doesn't matter what country they're coming in from. Send all the Russians back. Russians fleeing from Ukraine, right? Ukrainians fleeing from Russia. They're legal. If they're illegally here, they go back too. I don't care what color they are, John. You just made all that up too because you need a red herring. You can't compete with the argument. So it's Smoky Man bad, Smoky Man racist. You can't prove it, of course. So you just assert it. But just calling us Nazis and calling us fascists, that doesn't work anymore, John. You're going to have to make good, coherent arguments to convince people now.
Go ahead, John.
I didn't call you Nazis. That particular regime did promote a very evil form of Christian nationalism called positive Christianity. And they tried to merge Christian symbols with their nationalist ideology. They rejected the Jewish parts of the Bible. They said Jesus was white, and they weren't really big on love your neighbor. They rejected that, and they made it about purify the nation. And it deified the state, because that's what Christian nationalism does. It's idolatry. It puts the state above Jesus's commands to love each other. And of course, that then says, well, some people God likes better and some people God doesn't like, which always leads to hatred, always leads to violence. And that's how the cross turned into a swastika in that corner of the world. This is always the problem. Every time Christianity aligns itself with empire, you get the opposite of Christ's commandments. The Crusader states slaughtering pagans and Muslims and Jews, and they rationalized it because they were doing it for Christ. It was always about power. Same with slavery. They always make it about power, but the true Christ followers resist.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Meanwhile, the secularist state of the Soviet Union killed way more than Hitler could ever have dreamed of, right? And it's constitutionally a secular state. Was constitutionally secular and a feminist dream, John. They loved it. Free abortions for all, John. That was literally written into their law, to Russian law. Free abortions for everybody. What are you talking about? Secularist states have not solved for any of this. When China moved over to a more secular state, they implemented a one-child policy. It's monstrous. Secularism and secular states do not solve for the corruption of power on this earth. They don't do that because we're born in sin, John. There's going to be, no matter who's in power, you're going to end up having corruption. Doesn't matter. But the promotion of Christian ethics in society is the very same thing you claim that you want. You just want to do it in democracy at a ballot box. Okay, great. The thing is, though, is that that's still the status quo. That's status quo progressivism. All it does is breed power blocks and people doing infighting, people fighting against people. Your system advocates that, John.
Go ahead, John.
Again, I just want people to do what Jesus directly told us about how we should treat each other, because I think that's good for the economy. I think empathy and love and reaching out for the less fortunate is good economics. It's good capitalism. It's good nation building. It is how you build a middle class. We have 45 years of ironclad proof that giving more and more tax cuts to the rich has only succeeded in turning the middle class into the top of the bottom. America is a secular state with religious freedom. Our official national religion is all and or none. The founders were very particular about this, and they wrote it down more than once. And they wrote it down in the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom and in the Treaty of Tripoli, ratified by Washington, signed by Adams. The government of the United States is in no way founded upon the Christian religion. And by the way, they owned slaves and they slaughtered Indians. They would have had no right to claim they were a Christian nation because slavery is the opposite of Christ.
Okay, so first of all, that's all lies. We started with the Articles of Confederation. Every single state was allowed to have whatever religion they wanted to inside of the state. And by the way, after the Articles of Confederation were done, we signed in the Constitution of the United States, because mostly interstate and intrastate commerce, along with a couple other things, you still, in order to vote in any of those states, guess what? You had to make a declaration of faith in many of those states, John. It was completely legal under the 10th Amendment. It was completely legal under the 10th Amendment to have religions inside of these states, and you clearly omit that. You clearly have omitted that as though that's not the case. It was the case. And the thing that's really funny here, John, is the world that you claim that you want a world under Christian ethics, that you want to produce, you say that is the bad world, and that the good world is the progressive secular ethics. It's the progressive secularists who are actually trying to save us by aborting all the children, right, John?
Go ahead, John.
I don't even understand what you just said, man. I mean, like, what? I don't have a right to tell your woman what she does with her body. I don't have a right to tell your mother what she does with her body. And if pregnancy and childbirth are more dangerous for a woman than abortion, I don't have a right to tell a woman what she does with her body. And the Bible's clear about it. The Hebrew faith believes life begins with first breath. God makes it very clear in Exodus 21. You want to go there? We can talk about it. There's a reason why abortions are legal and free in Israel right now, because the Bible never actually bans them and offers no penalties for terminating a pregnancy. God gives abortion tips to unfaithful pregnant wives in Numbers chapter 5 and Exodus 21. God asserts that a fetus is property. Ask a rabbi about the translation, and that a woman's life has more value in his eye. I'm not saying the Bible's pro-abortion. I'm saying Jesus is anti-death penalty and never comes out against abortion. They are legal and free in Israel. Google it.
Israel is a secular state, sir. It's not run by Orthodox Jews. It's a secular state. Look it up right now. How many are secularists versus how many are Orthodox Jews, and then tell us the numbers. You don't know what you're talking about. That was
Judaism doesn't ban it.
That's the point you tried to make during the Pierce Morgan debate, as though Israel, the nation, the secular nation of Israel, the liberal progressive nation of Israel that's not following Orthodox Judaism, bans abortion. So what? So do most of the Nordic or doesn't ban abortion. Neither do most of the Nordic nations. Neither does a lot of the West. The thing that's really interesting here, though, is that those are progressive secular values. The Soviet Union had the same policy under secular ethics. Okay, I have no idea what you're even talking about here. Your translation of Exodus 21 is just as messed up. You're only getting it from one single source, and we can go through Exodus 21 if you want to. And the thing is that we have multiple translations here, which would prove you wrong when you're saying that especially when you're talking about miscarriages. Let's get into it.
There are passages that will say when her fruit departs, and people will say, well, that just means it's not a miscarriage. Her fruit departed. She gave birth early. Well, if she gave birth early and it's a healthy baby, then why is there a fine paid to the husband? I mean, you should be happy about this. Just like in Texas, the woman still has no choice. If two men are fighting and one strikes a woman and her baby goes out of her, and again, ask a rabbi. I've interviewed rabbis about it. Abortion's permissible. That's why that's the law. Again, Numbers 5, look at it. I didn't write it. The only real mention of abortion in the whole Bible. In the story of Tamar in Genesis, when they find out that she's pregnant and they think it's from harlotry, and Judah and everyone wants to burn her alive, that's because a fetus wasn't considered a person. I didn't write it. So again, the Bible never has any penalties for ending a pregnancy. I'm not saying it's pro-abortion. Jesus is against murdering the sinner, and it's still murder even if the government does it.
Yeah, so John, should we trust you on abortion and homosexuality, or should we trust the people who were the least displaced from the biblical interpretation, who existed before 380 AD, and when you claim that the corruption of the church came into place? Would you like for me to read you multiple church fathers who claim that at conception is when ensoulment occurs, John? Would you like for me to read those for you?
Plenty who say at quickening ensoulment.
Show me any. Show me any of the original church fathers who were in prominent positions who were saying that abortion was okay. Because I went through and researched that. Yeah, because none of them, John, none of them did. They all said it was an abhorrent practice, and they said the same thing about homosexuality. This is before Rome ever even got involved in 380 AD, John. And so the thing is you pick and choose like you always do. For only that, it's really funny how your interpretation of the Bible happens to just coexist with the status quo of progressivism, John. Isn't that really weird?
No, I'm a liberal because of Jesus. I wish I could be a shitty little bigot and be mean to gay people and think women are a man's property. I wish that I could look down on other people because I'm so much better and God likes me more because I'm in the right God fan club. I wish I could smugly presume that I'm entitled to a place in heaven because I accept Jesus as my savior, even if I don't give a rat's ass about following his actual commandments. But I'm not that good, man. I'm not. So I try to live by his teachings and follow his teachings. And I don't hate you. This entire thing has just been about like you spitting venom at me. And I get that that's the kind of Christian you want to be, bro. I'm not going to be that way back to you. I'm just not. And
I
I
haven't
haven't
said
lied
it
to
in
you.
word about you
Haven't
personally, John. You just made
Everything
it
you
up.
say is about how stupid I am and your misguided
Never called you
philosophy.
stupid.
Hold on,
Oh,
hold on.
everything you've said. Look, folks, again, man,
Never
I
said
just
any of
say
that.
I
Hold on.
follow the teachings of Christ. Judaism doesn't ban abortion. Christ opposes the death penalty.
Yeah. So note the sheer hypocrisy of John here.
There it is again.
John
This
John
guy.
wants. Yeah, me calling your position hypocrisy, right? How is that a personal attack? It's a hypocritical position, and it needs to be pointed out that it's a hypocritical position. You want voting intact for the purpose of political power, and you don't want Christians to have it. You're making it very clear that you think if Christians themselves have some sort of access to a nation, or they build a nation based around Christian ethics, that it's going to be too exclusionary for you, John. Right? Yeah. At the same time, you want to be exclusionary towards Christian ethics themselves. If Christians, for instance, at the ballot box, they decide that and vote against gay marriage, which they always did, that was forced on us, John. We weren't given a choice. Where was our democratic choice for gay marriage? We didn't get one. Right. And the thing is, it's like, I would love to put some of that stuff back on the ballot, John, and actually have people vote on it. But that wouldn't go very well for you progressives.
You know, young people today, I was raised to be homophobic and I was awful. I was just so cruel. And I thought, oh, Leviticus shall not lie with a man. There it is. God said so. Of course, no one follows Leviticus, and anyone who says they do is lying. And Leviticus 20:10 commands us all to stone Donald Trump to death for adultery. So anyone who's citing Leviticus is weaponizing parts of the Bible they don't really follow to justify cruelty to a minority that Christ commands you to love. Why should I believe that Trump supporters care about the actual teachings of Christ? And would you please tell me again the specific teaching of Christ that the MAGA movement fights for legislatively?
Yeah, you remember how this debate's not about MAGA? You're asking specific questions about the Christian
You
right.
made it about me, bro. I thought we were coming to talk about nationalism.
And we are talking about nationalism. What does that have to do with MAGA? It has nothing to do with Christian nationalism, which is the proposition that Christians be the dominant force, the ethical force in the nation. That's what Christian nationalism is. So Trump is the dominant Christian force in the nation? So Trump is a Christian?
No. That's his message.
Oh, I see. It's his message.
That Christianity should dominate. So please tell me.
And you think Christianity shouldn't dominate? You just want Christians to be the dominant force at the ballot box, John?
The question was, please tell me what teaching of Christ they fight for. Why should I believe Trump supporters care about the actual stuff Christ commands?
Yeah, because most of them are the Catholics. Most of them are the Orthodox. Most of them are the people who defend you at night while you're sleeping. And what these people do is they do follow in their ethical purview.
One teaching, one.
They do. I already gave you the parable of the talents and explained how you can spiritually enrich people by having good policies for the nation so that your people aren't completely ravaged by poverty.
So no direct action, no help,
there are good.
Hold on.
What are you confused? Do you know what the parable of the talents was?
Yes, I
do. Okay, great.
Then
don't tell me that I didn't give you a teaching of Christ. I did. Not only that, we can go through the virtues themselves if you would like to. We can go through cardinal virtues. You're a Catholic if you want to. We can talk about temperance. But the thing that's so funny, John, and really cracks me up, and I'll just point this out. The biggest hypocrisy that you have is that you yourself are advocating for the status quo when it comes to these things. You want a status quo democracy where just everybody can vote, right? But you want them all to be, you want Christian ethics implemented. Well, how do we get to Christian ethics if most of the people who are voting aren't Christian? If that's declining in the nation, how would we even get to that, John? You say because, well, secularists, they actually have the real Christian ethics. That was your argument. That the secularists were better Christians than the Christians, John. Yes, you did. I'll give you the timestamp.
Some of the best Christ followers I know have been atheists, and some of the most unholy heathens I know have been Christians. We've all known mean Christians, and we've all known wonderful Christ-like non-Christians. Again, man, Christ's whole movement is about humility. You keep telling me all the reasons why your tribe is better than other people, why men are better than women, why this group is better than this group. I mean, it's so the opposite of the gospel, and I get it. It's like this whole notion that somehow there has to be some kind of superiority. It's a Christian supremacy. this is a movement that, with respect, I'm sure I'm sure you're very nice to the people that you like, but this is not a movement about the teachings of Christ on earth as it is in heaven. It's about conservative Christian power and conservative Christian domination of society. And as we've seen throughout history, from Columbus to slavery to the Holocaust, every time the Jesus movement aligns with authoritarian power, awful anti-Jesus things happen.
Again, John, there's not a single political ideology that you can produce. It doesn't matter what it is, that when there's powerful people involved, there's not corruption. And there's nothing you're proposing right now that would solve for that either. Oh, we're going to have a democracy and the status quo. Yeah, that's really solved for political corruption, hasn't it, John? Not at all. Not even a little bit. In fact, it creates voting blocks. It creates voting blocks who are pitted against each other because they're ideologically distinct. And so that actually creates even more conflict, John, and you don't even know how to solve for it. You have no idea how you could even solve for that.
A little bit, yeah.
Not only that, what's hilarious on top of that is the complete blatant hypocrisy of you once again saying this is about Christian supremacy. Look, Andrew over here hates everybody. Hasn't ever been able to prove I hate anybody. Just throws it out there, right? But says I'm the insulting one, which is hilarious. The hypocrisy here, though, is he just doesn't want Christians to be in positions of authoritative power. Only secularists.
No, that's
only secularists.
No, not at all. No, I just like calling out hypocrites, my friend. That's it. I like calling out revoltingly,
go look in the mirror.
Revoltingly fake frauds who claim Jesus as all this public piety to show they're so much better, and in reality, they don't give a rat's ass about caring for the least of us. They don't care about going to the margins. They don't want to get their hands dirty with those unpleasant people. It's easier to just assume I'm better and the rapture will take me and the Muslims are bad. Man, whoever you hate, that's who God is. Whatever group you allow yourself to view as less than human is what God's going to wind up being. Maybe the spiritual test is not whether you're so much better than everyone else, but to look at the people you look down on and see the divine in them. I mean, I pray that you get like a transgender friend someday or an undocumented immigrant friend someday, just so you can see them as people. And I'm sorry, bro, but like I used to be like you. I used to taunt and belittle and just try to hurt someone so much, and I can't do it anymore. So you take your best shot, pal. I'm going to wish you love.
That's all you've done is say that I'm hate-filled, say that I hate other people, taunted me the entire debate as much as you possibly could, try to make these various claims. You even made a comparison that the Christian right is like Nazis. They have a lot in unison, including the fact that they made a cross, which, by the way, is not even true, came from an old Buddhist symbol. This is what's hilarious to me, right, is that the very things he's accusing me of, he's guilty of, and then yet calls me the hypocrite. So this is hilarious. On top of that, the true hypocrisy comes from the fact that Christians, if they're not doormats, you consider them to be hateful. If they advocate for themselves in any way, shape, or form, they're hateful. The same thing was used by Alinsky. Okay, you can look at Alinsky's rules for radicals when you point at the opposition, say they can never live up to their own standard. It's rule 3 or rule 4. Well, guess what? The communists tried to do this with the Tsar in Russia, and they ended up killing all of the Orthodox Christians there because the Christians were pacifistic and refused to stand up for themselves. I got a great book I'll send you. It's called On Resistance to Evil for the people who lived in that time.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm not even sure what we're talking about at this point. I'm sorry. Like, I hate that this is so negative, man. Like, I got nothing against you. I really don't. But I will say that authoritarian Christianity is always the opposite of Christ's ministry. And throughout history, the great struggle of Christianity has been Christ followers against authoritarian. So you got the Crusades, and they're slaughtering Jews and pagans, and you have the Christ followers like Saint Francis, who leaves the battle and preaches nonviolence. You have the Crusader Christians, and Columbus is slaughtering the Taino people in the shadow of the cross, and it's the priest on his boat, on his last voyage, Bartolomeo de las Casas, first white person to protest in this hemisphere. You've got slavery propped up by authoritarian Christianity, and it's the Christ followers like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and the Quakers who fight back. Segregation, it's Dr. King. The Holocaust, Dietrich Bonhoeffer martyrs himself for his Jewish brothers and sisters. The history of Christian activism is always resistance to Christian authoritarianism.
What a crock. What are you talking about? Christianity crowned great kings. We had the Byzantine Empire. It lasted way longer than the United States did. Okay. Christian ethics spread globally has done more to uplift people than any other thing. The Catholic Church literally went through and civilized most of the world. The people you're talking about right now who went in, like Columbus, or let's talk about Cortez. Oh, I'm sorry. Did they kill a bunch of human sacrificing heathens? heathens who were cutting people's hearts out on top of their temple? My God. Oh my God. How could they do such a thing? Of course, that's what happened, John. That's what happens when civilizations meet with each other. And when you have one that's cutting the hearts out of their own people on top of a temple, you start to kind of consider them to be a threat to humanity. I understand why they thought that, John. I don't know why you don't think that, because they were. But the thing that's really funny here is, like, again, you have nothing more than the status quo. You can't even refute that my epistemology for Christianity is wrong because you reject the Bible itself.
No, I don't hear any Jesus in your gospel. Again, those Aztecs and indigenous people who did human sacrifice or whatever you're talking about, they weren't claiming to be Christian while they did it. I'm talking about the grotesque fake Christians of history. Columbus was a sex trafficker. I'll say it again. Columbus sex trafficked girl children back to Europe for pleasure.
Yeah, it was the age of consent in the Indian tribes.
Columbus was, I'm glad you find it acceptable, bro. Thank you for letting us know. Columbus was a slaver. He put people in chains. He would cut off the hands of boys as young as 14 if they didn't bring him a fistful of gold. And it was the Catholic priest on his boat who called it out to the queen, because even back then, 500 years ago, Christ followers knew that committing atrocities in the shadow of the cross, because you're forcing Christianity on the locals, is an insult to the gospel. But please defend Columbus's sex trafficking if you need.
Nobody's defending Columbus, but pointing out that the Catholic Church encompassed the entire known world to these people, right? Because it's such a massive political organization at that point, of course, there's going to be sections of it which engage in horrendous activity, John. That's going to be anything that you look at, including the United States itself. All we have to do is look at public schools. Public schools, where I would argue some of the most sex trafficking happens, for instance. The thing that's really funny is, like, the more widespread the organization, that's how it works. You're going to have corrupt sections of it, and you deal with the corrupt sections of it. But let's not pretend that the people that Columbus and Cortez and others were dealing with weren't a bunch of human sacrificers, that they weren't themselves essaying children, because they didn't have age of consent laws, and they were themselves slavers, John. So the moral equivalency here is hilarious, because there isn't really one, right? You're just pointing out, though, those Christians over there, they were doing bad things, and the people that they were killing were also doing bad things. Like, yeah, welcome to history, John. Has nothing to do with the proposition of Christian nationalism, though, does it?
So let me just say again that those indigenous people that may have been committing atrocities on each other were not pretending to be Christian. Columbus represented Christianity aligned with empire, committing atrocities. Columbus was a revoltingly fake Christian. Hitler was a fake Christian. If you are bragging of how Christian you are, but you are enslaving people or ethnically cleansing the land of indigenous people, you are a fake Christian. If you are publicly proclaiming your piety, but hating people and trying to hurt people, you are a fake Christian. And I'm here for all the Christ followers, conservative to liberal, who recognize that this movement of love should not be hijacked by a mean little self-serving tax-free clique that's all about power.
Imagine the hypocrisy of sitting up here and piety signaling like John just did, and then saying, "Oh, the piety signalers, they're the big problem." Do I look like I'm piety signaling, sir? I don't think so. On top of that, let me just point out to you very quickly that giving a historic standard that there was bad Christians in places is not something that we're even arguing about, and I would concede to it. I'm just pointing out that doesn't take empire. It doesn't take empire for you to have heathens running around cutting each other's hearts out, essaying children, and slaving. That was all over the world. On top of that, when you're talking about Christians who are in authority, I can point you to many good kings who were Christians and ran good nations. The thing is really funny is, like, you just like to pick and choose, but every political system is eventually going to corrode, and it's eventually going to be destroyed. But the status quo right now is untenable, John, and that's all you have to offer people. The status quo of progressivism, and you're doing nothing for anybody except trying to create a power block for yourself while trying to say other people are trying to do that against you. That's it.
Okay.
Well, thank you all so much for having me. I don't know if we accomplished anything. I hope we did. I'm always happy to come and talk about stuff like this, because I'm not allowed to hate people. I'm not allowed to hate anybody. I'm not good enough to hate anybody. And so I'm grateful that y'all would have me. The prophets all warn against idolatry, not only of false gods, but of any earthly power set in God's place. And nationalism is that kind of idolatry. It places a flag where the cross should be. And Jesus commanded loyalty to God and conscience above Caesar. And Christian nationalism is always about loyalty to Caesar, cloaked in religious language. And I get the appeal, especially in chaotic, scary times. I understand why that would be so attractive. It never works. And it always leads to the opposite, because fundamentalism of all religions is what's killing the world's religions. Friends, it's not the majority of religious people. When you hear that young people are giving up on religion, and people say religion's responsible for all the violence and rape and oppression of women, no, it's the fundamentalist wings of all the world's religions. The extreme conservative Christians, the extreme conservative Jews, the extreme conservative Muslims. The overwhelming majority of liberal, moderate, and conservative Christians, Jews, and Muslims are getting along just fine right now all around the world. They're going to school together. They're opening businesses. They're forming families. They're making communities. It's always the fundamentalists of all the world's religions that have the same hangups, right? Number one, women are always inferior. The more conservative your religious sect is, the more, God made half the world just a little less good. Number two, the sex hangups. The more extreme your religion is to the right, the more they'll have all kinds of problems, from the homophobia to the women, etc. Excuse me. Number three, violence is okay if my side does it. This is fundamentalism 101. I speak for God. If you're against me, you must be for Satan, and God won't mind if I kill Satan. And that's why religious fundamentalism is always dangerous, because they think they're allowed to kill people. Number four, fundamentalism is always a focus on punishment over healing. And finally, number five, there's always this penchant for victimhood, this narrative of oppression that means we get to be as mean and shitty to other people because someone else was mean and shitty to us once. The inconvenient problem about Jesus is he doesn't promise you anything for following him. He says you have to pick up your cross and follow him, and it's going to be hard. When Jesus says, I came to bring a sword, he's not talking about a literal blade for warfare. Jesus is the guy who says, put away your sword. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword. He's saying that when you follow his inconvenient teachings of radical love and going against your society if it's being unjust and standing up for the least of us, that's going to be unpopular and it's going to cost you something. That's what he means by that. So I'm honored to be here, and I say thank you to everyone who's here in good faith, and the ones who aren't, I wish you guys love anyway. And thank you very much for having me. It's been pretty interesting.
Debates are about worldviews, and the collision of these two worldviews that you saw today. John, what he's done is he's engaged in something of the worst form of hypocrisy. The entirety of his worldview revolves around the fact that Christians collectivizing for power is authoritarian and that's going to have bad results. However, the only promise that he can give you is that he wants to collectivize people into individualistic ideological voting blocks from which they can fight with each other more. It's the silliest. And he, by the way, he never actually refuted that, never showed us any better way. He just said that he wanted a democracy in which all people could vote. It's the same exact thing we have right now. Same exact system. He never proposed a single other system than that. And what does that do? It collectivizes power in the voting blocks, which he's after, so that he can legislate against your interest. That's exactly what's going on. And so at the same time, he's attacking us for collectivizing for power. Remember that he already outed himself as his system is doing exactly that. He wants to collectivize for power. It's just power, not in your interest. What's hilarious here too, more hypocrisy. John has called me hateful. He said I'm bigoted. He said that I hate brown people. He said all of these various things. And when I asked him to prove any of these claims, he says, well, I don't know, man. I just get the vibe, man. The vibe, man. My vibe check is going off, and I just kind of vibily think you hate brown people because I want to think that. No evidence, no proof, no nothing, because he never has any.
No statement.
Also, we also destroyed his epistemology. He picks and chooses what he wants. He said, I didn't ever say Paul corrupted the Bible. I quoted it from his own book. Okay, well, maybe I did say Paul corrupted the Bible, but that doesn't mean everything Paul said was wrong. What about female apostles? There were female apostles. Is that in the Bible, John? No, that's not in the Bible. I just happened to think that there were, and they were so misogynistic, they just chose not to write it down. So how could we trust anything John says about the very source of what he claims Jesus even said, or his interpretation? He picks and chooses whatever the hell he wants. And so the thing is foundationally, is epistemology. The source of his knowledge makes no sense because he contradicts it himself. He says that there's things going on that he can't demonstrate are biblically true. He claims that that Jesus wasn't against abortion. He was pro-homosexuality. The people who existed long before 380 AD, when he says that Rome corrupted the church, we have quote after quote after quote of them saying, no, that's not the case. I asked John for one the other direction. He said, well, I'd never made the claim that early Christians were for abortion or homosexuality because they weren't. Exactly, because they weren't, John. They weren't. Your epistemology is completely flawed, and it's been flawed the entire time.
You don't believe in Leviticus.
It's my closing. Leviticus is reconciled by Acts, John. Okay, you go to Acts 15, it's reconciled there. There's 3 laws for Gentiles. No strangled animals, no drinking animal blood. Right, John? Is that ringing a bell? It's reconciled in Acts. You'd have no idea what you're talking about.
Where does Jesus say which ones you pick and choose?
You have no idea what you're talking about. It's my closing statement. I didn't interrupt yours once, John. You can't even control yourself. I never called John a personal name once. I contended with his ideology the entire time. He became very embittered when he couldn't defend it. And so it became very personal for him, while at the same time he claims he's very loving and piety signaling. He was destroyed on every single point when it came to access. He asked, how is it part of Jesus's message for Christian nationalism? When I point out how you can actually uplift the poor and how the millionaires and billionaires actually would prefer to have illegals flooding in, he had no counterclaim to that whatsoever, except to kind of agree with it. On top of that, when I point out how you can uplift the poor the best possible way in the teachings of Jesus Christ, right? That's not good enough for John. We have to have some type of social health care or something like that, because that's what Jesus would have wanted. It's like, where's that in the Bible? Who knows? John makes it all up as he goes. No, Matthew 25 doesn't say universal health care for all, paid for by the state, John. You made it up. You made it up. You'll never be able to demonstrate it because you made it up. So anyway, you can see the contrast in ideology, the contrast in worldviews. And the thing is that I'm always prepared to defend mine with actual facts. John, not so much. And it's all about his hatred for Christianity. That's what I think. His hatred for Christianity and him trying to get a coalition power block away from Christians who he knows are creating a resurgence in this nation. And with that, that's my closing. And I do, and I'll say this, but one final thing. I do appreciate your guts in showing up for a debate. You'll always have my respect for that. You'll always have my respect for showing up to do a debate. That's one thing you'll leave with, no matter how much I disagree with you. At least you had the guts to do that.
Kaio with the big 50 says, I hate to break it to you, John, but Christ's commands go directly to the individual and the church. You don't take from another and give to others, then declare you're following Christ. Using someone else's money is pretty far from Christ. John, you're welcome to respond if you have a response to that.
I mean, Jesus endorses taxation for the purposes of redistribution. That is literally what render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and render unto God that which is God's is about. They were trying to trap him, and he foiled them again and said, no, pay the tax. That's Caesar's. Pay God what belongs to God. So Jesus does come out and say, go ahead and pay your damn taxes. And again, if you believe in democracy and the teachings of Christ, then you believe that we should fight for policies that uplift the least of these and don't put the powerful first. But we've had a very powerful propaganda system in this country, and I do think the real root of our problems is big money in politics. That big money in politics is the square root of most of our social problems at this point, because it's making sure that we're going to keep on having the government for the wealthy and the middle class getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and middle class buying power is at its lowest point since 1968. That's not the fault of illegal immigrants or Hunter Biden or trans kids.
It's a fault of you pumping the economy with money, Democrats, John. And by the way, let me point out that no, that's not what that means. The render under Caesar doesn't say anything about a redistributive policy. You made that part up again.
That's what taxes are.
No, they're not a redistributive policy.
You pay taxes and the government redistributes them. That's by definition what they do with them.
No, when you're talking about public services, if you want to make the claim that that's redistribution, fine. But if you're making the claim that the redistributive services, which are there, are supposed to be specifically for the purposes of like your own personal health care and social safety net and retirement, that's a whole different proposition, isn't it, John?
It's redistribution of wealth by government. He says, pay your taxes.
How do you know Caesar didn't just sit on a pile of that money?
If you want your money to go to the rich, then you know where to vote. If you want to try to help other people, try to build coalitions for politicians. And I'm not talking about Democrats, because I don't think the Democrats do a very good job of fighting for the poor. Although right now they are with the shutdown.
No, what he's saying,
I don't think they are.
Yeah, what he's saying is don't violate the law of Caesar, okay? And just go ahead and pay your taxes so you don't get in any trouble. That's not where my kingdom's ace. And by the way, yeah, that is going by Jesus. And by the way, the whole idea of the redistribution that you're talking about here, totally made up. Yeah. You just made that whole part up because it's amazing. It's amazing how your worldview just so happens, the Christianity from 2,000 years ago just so happens to align perfectly with modern day progressivism, huh, John? Isn't that strange to you at all?
So again, I mean, you must hate Acts of the Apostles, because the early church practiced radical communal living where all wealth and all resources were shared. I mean, that's what Acts of the Apostles is all about.
There was so here's the thing.
I get that you don't like me, but I mean, like,
that was all voluntary, right, John?
Radical, like,
was that all voluntary? And that was all voluntary, wasn't it?
Let me move to.
Wasn't that all voluntary, John?
Let me move to the next question.
Yeah, John, it was all voluntary. Yes, it was all voluntary. And so here's the thing, right? Is like the individual got to choose
for that.
They got to choose. How do you vote for voluntary giving to an authoritative body? How do you vote for that? What are you talking about? You're voting so that I voluntarily give taxation, John?
I vote to help the sick. Throwing 20 million low-income and disabled American citizens off Medicaid is the opposite of Jesus.
No, you vote to steal my money, John.
It's being done.
No, you vote to steal from me.
Allow me, gentlemen.
Research the bill. It's the largest transfer of wealth to the 1% in the history of budgets.
That's what you said. That's what you guys said about Trump's early the TCNJ. That was a wonderful piece of legislation.
Trump added more.
That was a wonderful piece of legislation.
He added more to the debt than any president in history.
Oh, nonsense! Nonsense. Real wages went up under Trump. What do you mean? Like under Biden, if we'd had a comparison for Biden, it's not even close. What are you talking about? If we adjust for COVID, Trump was one of the best economic presidents ever lived. Ever.
Let me get one more question in at the very least, because I know John has a heart out, and I want to at least address the 250s. Professional Zilk says, Poland made Jesus Christ of the nation in 2016. It has 0% illegal immigration, has 2% crime rate nation, wide and universal health care, a Christian nation. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, so I think that this is bringing in a good point, right? So he says 0% illegal immigration, 2% crime rate nationwide, and universal health care. Remember, I made this point to you earlier, John, that it's usually the nations who don't have mass migration who can actually do universal health care. And the reason for that is their healthcare systems not being completely decimated by people not able to pay their healthcare tab. That's why. That's exactly why that's the case. If we had universal health care here, everybody and their brother who would come in here would bankrupt that system.
There's no official religion of Poland. It is most of it is Roman Catholic, my folks, but the Polish constitution guarantees freedom of religion. And as with most countries, the church attendance has dropped deeply over the past couple of years. And in this country, we've witnessed the same thing. About 90% of us identified as Christian in the 90s. Now it's down to around 65%. 2022 was the first year where we saw a participation in weekly services dip below 50%. And young people aren't leaving religion because they don't like God, or they don't like Jesus, or they don't like Noah's Ark. They're leaving because they don't like meanness. And they don't like.
Interesting how we're seeing such a resurgence of it then. An article just dropped yesterday that it's at the highest it has been in 7 years, the resurgence amongst Zoomers who are becoming more right-wing than ever.
Well, I don't understand how you're right-wing and follow Jesus. I don't see how that works.
I don't understand how you're left-wing and think that you can just steal people's money via the ballot box and that's following Jesus, John.
Conservative religious people, conservative religious leaders aligning with authoritarian power is literally what killed Jesus, my friend.
No. It's left-wing weasels who were terrified of the Romans who killed Jesus, and they stated specifically in John that they were terrified that the Roman authority was going to kill them if they started following Jesus. Left-wing weasels like you.
The Pharisees were not liberal, my friend. Jesus called them out. Jesus was the liberal of that story. He was the radical reformer who brought a new covenant, and it's kind of what got him killed. The Pharisees were not all of them. Jesus was friends with many Pharisees. He may have been a Pharisee, some scholars think, and Nicodemus was his friend. But the extreme conservatives of the Pharisees, the one Jesus has all of his throwdowns with, those guys, the extreme conservative religious leaders aligning with imperial authority, is literally what killed Christ.
Really? So it wasn't the fact that they were terrified, according to the book of John, that Roman authority was going to come in and blame them for everybody following this man after he made his declaration as a supreme power of the world because he's God, and that they were going to punish them for that because they were terrified of the authority that they were part of, which was the Roman authority.
Extreme conservative Pharisees.
That was not extreme conservatism.
And again,
that's not what caused that.
But I do appreciate that you point out that it's the Romans who did it, that it was the Romans who he was judged in a Roman court, held in a Roman cell, tortured and scourged by Roman guards, forced to carry.
No, their fears were unfounded. Their fears were unfounded. Pontius Pilate tried not to have him killed. It was definitely
when Rome rewrote that way. They made Pontius Pilate offer the guy. Yeah, but the Jews had
no
power.
When Rome rewrote it, yeah, okay.
The Jews had no power.
Okay, give me a break.
Folks, the Jews had no power over the Roman Empire. Christ was condemned by a Roman governor, had to carry his Roman-made cross to the Roman chosen site.
The behest of the Jews who were there, John.
Where Roman soldiers drove nails into his hands and feet and mocked him for being Jewish with a sign that said, "This is the King of the Jews."
At the behest of the Jews who were there. At the behest of the Jews.
The Jews were occupied by military occupation by the Roman Empire. They had no power over the Roman Empire, and those rabbis had no power to make the Roman Empire kill anyone the Romans didn't want to. The Romans killed Jesus. Don't trust anyone who tells you it's the Jews.
At the behest of who? Who asked Pontius Pilate to kill him?
The Romans are the ones who drove the nails.
Who asked Pontius Pilate to kill him, John?
The point of the Jesus story is that everyone killed him, my friend. His friends sold him out.
Who asked Pontius Pilate to kill him?
I don't know the exact Pharisee name. Which one? I know
what
you're trying to get me to say it. I'm not going to say it because I don't blame the Jews for killing Christ, and most Christian
I'm not blaming the Jews, right?
And
but I'm also
what are you doing? Romans killed him.
I'm being very specific about the demands. It was the demands of a sect of Judaism which wanted him dead. Yes, that is factually true.
On one thing, that it was a Roman execution with a Roman cross and Roman soldiers did the nailing.
The Romans didn't want to, though. Pilate didn't want to.
And the Romans had no power over these little rabbis. And Romans hung a sign mocking his Judaism over his head, right?
Yeah, those little rabbis were working hand in hand with Romans. They were terrified of them.
Extreme conservative religious authoritarian.
It's funny though, the Roman authority didn't want to actually kill Jesus. They did it at the behest of the Pharisee.
Poor fellow, when they were scourging him, they felt so bad. They had these Jews. We're just the Roman Empire. We have no power. The Jews that we occupy are just forcing us. Oh, and we love this. Come on, bro. Think about it for more than 5 minutes.
You think that the Romans didn't want to keep the peace?
Andrew, the point is that everyone killed him. The cops,
everyone killed him.
The religious authorities. His friends sold him out, and he comes back and he forgives everybody, and that's the point of the story.
Yeah, I agree that the point is to spread the good news that Jesus Christ has come and conquered death.
Killed him, and he comes back.
Jesus Christ has come to conquer death. That is true. But the thing that's really funny here is that the progressive, yes, forgives the world. As long as they come to Him, through Him only, is that the case? Yes, through Him only. Yeah. Only through Christ.
So
only through Christ.
Jews go to hell, Andrew?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Jews go to
yes.
Is Gandhi in hell right now?
No, of course not. Is God a Jew?
Is Gandhi in hell?
Gandhi?
In hell?
Yeah. Probably. Only through Christ can he get salvation.
All the Muslims are in hell, right? They're all
yes.
Native Americans?
Yes, probably.
All the Buddhists are in hell, right?
As an Orthodox, hang on, I'll answer your question. Can I answer your question?
Please.
From an Orthodox perspective, I can't say with surety who has salvation or who doesn't. Okay, but the chances are pretty good that if you reject Christ as being the your savior, you not only reject Christ, but could then consider him a false Messiah, which is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Chances seem pretty good to me that you're displaced from the energies of God. Yes.
I don't believe the Jews, all the Jews, are burning in hell.
I don't believe all the Jews are either.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's really been an
I don't
experience.
believe all the Jews